Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live emergency briefing ahead of a big-time tornado outbreak expected tomorrow and into Thursday into Georgia and the Carolinas. But severe weather is already breaking out over portions of western Oklahoma. You can see in the bottom right, that's the severe storm that right now is just to the southwest of Willow, Oklahoma, to the west of Granite, to the northwest of Mangum. You may remember back in 2019 that high risk out there in Oklahoma. That tornado in Mangum was basically one of the few tornadoes that happened during that entire setup. This one right now is just a hail producer. Looks like it's mainly going to be a predominantly a hail producer, but it is very possible as the low-level jet intensifies overnight tonight that these even could become tornado producers in Oklahoma. And this mode is going to continue into Arkansas late night tonight through early tomorrow, and then the outbreak is going to begin. So here you can see just some broad rotation, basically elevated mesocyclone so far. This one's producing hail up to a couple inches in diameter near the Willow area to the northwest of Granite. But this is just beginning. This is a nocturnal event that's going to happen overnight tonight across Oklahoma, and there is a 5% probability of tornadoes, and we're going to break down the environment that is expected out ahead of these things. There could even be a late night tornado tonight across central Oklahoma, including the Oklahoma City metro. You need to keep an eye on this. Definitely some renegade storms developing in western Oklahoma out ahead of these other storms. There's also some severe storms across the far northeastern Texas Panhandle to northwestern Oklahoma to the southwest of Woodward. And these storms are just developing ahead of the system that's supposed to eject tomorrow, and there is a moderate risk in place. There you can see the giant moderate risk. There have even been discussions that this could be upgraded into a high risk tonight at the 6Z outlook. But this thing stretches all the way from central Arkansas across large portions of central and northern Mississippi, even southern Mississippi, large portions of Alabama as well, into western Tennessee. And that's probably going to be where the high risk is located. And I wouldn't be surprised if that moderate risk is expanded even further. The moderate extends down into northeastern Louisiana. And there is a hatch area for strong tornadoes. Could be multiple rounds of dangerous supercell storms producing strong, violent tornadoes out here. This is a 15% hatch area for strong tornadoes. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to dial in those severe weather safety plans. Stay tuned to your weather radio. Stay tuned to those alerts, watches, and warnings throughout the day. It does look like severe weather could be beginning by the morning hours, mid to late morning across portions of Arkansas. As that warm front lifts off to the north, it looks like a strong surface low is expected to lift from northeastern Oklahoma into central Missouri. And you basically have a massive, strongly sheared warm sector ahead of this big-time trough. And look at that trough. That is an absolute monster right there. Basically a textbook ski jump configuration. This is your ski jump. The stronger mid and upper level winds rotating around the south side of this trough. It even gains a little bit of a negative tilt too. So even though this is a closed 500 millibar low, this trough axis does have just a little bit of a negative tilt to it, which helps to make for an even larger strongly sheared warm sector downstream of this. And this is the system behind the one that caused the blizzard in Denver and also the tornado outbreak across the Texas Panhandle. This is basically a kicker system coming in here, digging into Dixie Alley. Quite a dangerous setup here. But look at this flow around the south and east side of this 500 millibar vort. A big bowling ball, compact Vortmax forecast to dig south through Oklahoma. This is at 20 to 21 Z, so about 3 to 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. And by this time, you've already got a lot of cyclonic curvature aloft, a lot of vorticity advection across that very large warm sector. And that's going to create bands of renegade supercells here in the open warm sector across Mississippi into Alabama as that warm front lifts north through Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. And there's going to definitely be multiple rounds of renegade supercells that are going to develop in the vicinity of this warm front. There's also going to be a band of supercells that develops along the cold front to the west. That's going to move in to central and eastern Arkansas. That's going to be a wave with embedded tornadoes within it as well. But just an incredible upper level storm system that you can see there. And this is definitely your classic Dixie Alley type of an event. You have this massive, moist, unstable warm sector across multiple states This is covering Arkansas, Louisiana, the entire state of Mississippi. That warm front's lifting up into western Tennessee here, into central Alabama. A little bit of a wedge of cool air, but this warm front is going to overcome that on Thursday. It looks like that severe weather threat shifts off to the east, portions of Georgia and the Carolinas as well. But this is surface-based Cape, and you can just see a massive warm sector across multiple states. You can also see the evidence of these renegade supercells, little holes within that surface-based Cape shield. These are within a strongly sheared open warm sector. A lot of instability there, 2,000 to 3,000 Cape as well. You can see a little bit greater Cape from central and southern Mississippi into central and southern Alabama here. And the latest HRRR is showing just a little bit less instability further west across Arkansas with some more cloud cover building in there. But it is possible that by the mid to late morning hours, there could already be severe weather across central Arkansas along this warm frontal zone that's going to be right along I-40 there. But I think I'm going to be targeting these renegade storms that are going to develop in the open warm sector out in central southern Mississippi, maybe northern Mississippi as well, into western Alabama. This almost has a April 15, 2011 type feel to it. Where even by late morning there could be some renegade supercells that are producing tornadoes into central Mississippi there, moving out of far northeastern Louisiana, round upon round of dangerous tornadic supercells moving into western Alabama, potentially early. But this is a very dangerous setup whenever you see these massive warm sectors like this with the potential for renegade supercells, basically discrete supercellular modes here. You can see these renegade supercells, probably likely tornado producers. This is at 19Z, so this is 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time. You can see some renegades up here in the vicinity or just north of the warm front as well, draped across central Alabama, central Mississippi, and then up toward through central Arkansas, where it looks like there's going to be a broken line of convection as well, supercells within there, and possibly the formation of a QLCS pattern in western central Arkansas down into Louisiana that's going to march through this area. But before that happens, there's going to be round after round of these renegade supercells. So this is at 2 p.m. You're likely going to have these isolated storms in far eastern Mississippi there. And look at this low-level jet too. So across that entire unstable warm sector, you've got a low-level jet increasing over 40 knots already by 2 p.m. You can already see an increase in the low-level jet back here across Arkansas as the main wave starts to eject. So as is usually the case with Dixie Alley from a storm chaser perspective, even though this massive area looks favorable for a tornado threat with quite a bit of strong wind shear, you got to target somewhere within that large warm sector, and you have to decide between playing the main boundary back into central Arkansas, or do you play the renegade storms that develop in these bands out ahead of it in central southern Mississippi into western Alabama? That's probably what I'm going to do, is head out way to the east and chase those events. But it is very possible that they could just have an arc string of supercells up and down this arc from central Arkansas into Louisiana, and it just marches east with renegades out ahead of it. So multiple rounds of dangerous severe weather is expected. But as I mentioned, there is severe weather going on right now, and there is a severe thunderstorm watch across western Oklahoma. Hail is going to be the main threat, but there is a potential of tornadoes, especially some late-night tornadoes as well, and that includes the Oklahoma City metro, as these storms are going to be moving toward the metro late night tonight. So definitely keep those weather radios charged as you go through the night tonight. So, and there could be just a little bit of cloud cover. As I mentioned, the HRRR is showing some cloud cover and a little bit less instability across the Arkansas side of this thing. Let's pull up the internet here. We'll go over the latest HRRR model, and then I want to show you the 3-kilometer NAM would encourage keeping it, would suggest keeping eastern Arkansas in play. It has greater instability near the boundary, the ejecting surface low as well. First, I want to get an idea of the larger scale pattern. Let's look at the 3-kilometer NAM here. And I'm in Little Rock right now, so I'm going to be waking up at about 4 in the morning. And here is a system by 19Z over southwestern Oklahoma. That is the core of that vortex ejecting off to the east. A little bit of a negative tilt, but basically a neutral tilt with a stronger flow along the southern and southeastern side of that vortex, bringing a lot of strong mid and upper level flow, overspreading that warm sector downstream across multiple states. And this thing's going to excite a big time low level jet. This is at 19Z. And a lot of people have been asking what the comparisons are with the super outbreak of April 27, 2011. And even though this is likely going to be a dangerous outbreak over multiple states, those are the similarities with the super outbreak. In general, favorable wind shear and instability over multiple states, over a big time warm sector like this. But it's kind of a bit of almost a miniature super outbreak or April 27. April 27 had a much larger trough. It actually had a stronger low-level jet. The warm sector covered even more states and impinging into the southeastern U.S. as well. You had about 400 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, capes in excess of 4,000. So really everything thermodynamically and in terms of low-level wind shear was maxed out in the super outbreak. In this case, all those indices are just a little bit less, but still sufficient to get strong, violent tornadoes. And all it takes is one strong, violent tornado to cause major problems. But in this case, it looks like there's going to be multiple rounds of dangerous supercells. So here's at 19Z, and the 3 kilometer NAM has a core of a very stout low-level jet across eastern Arkansas by 19Z. So it looks a little bit different already than the HRRR. So there are some mesoscale features that have to come together. But this is the 3 kilometer NAM showing an abundance of instability across eastern Arkansas. And the HRRR actually had a bit of a hole in the cape up there in eastern Arkansas into northern Mississippi. The HRRR, or the 3 kilometer NAM, is not showing that. In fact, look at this massive warm sector, that warm front lifting all the way up to the Missouri boot heel by 19Z. This is the EHI, 0 to 3 kilometer EHI, just to kind of give you an idea of where that instability is located. Look at this in Alabama, 2 by 20Z, big time cape covering the whole entire state of Mississippi here, eastern Arkansas, into western Tennessee. Western Tennessee is going to have big problems potentially according to the 3 kilometer NAM. Jeez, look at this. And this is by 21Z or 4 p.m. It's got a 997 surface low over northwestern Arkansas. So this is a strong surface low, really back surface winds across eastern Arkansas by 4 p.m. Let's see what the HRRR has really quick, just to compare the surface fields between the 3 kilometer NAM and the HRRR. The HRRR is a little bit further north on the 3 kilometer NAM, a little bit slower, closer to the southwestern corner of Missouri by 21Z. But interestingly, it has this bit of a hole in the instability across northern Mississippi, which I don't think I buy this by the HRRR. I believe the 3 kilometer NAM a little bit more. I think you're going to have a cleaner, larger warm sector. I'm not really seeing much in the way of morning precipitation tainting this warm sector at all. In fact, it's almost scary how wide open this warm sector is. So that's the HRRR. And then you look at the 3 kilometer NAM, and there's a much more of an abundance of surface-based instability there. Storm relative helicity over that massive warm sector. This is at 21Z, 4 p.m. So you still have quite a bit of wind shear, but notice how the 0 to 1 kilometer helicity, even on the 3 kilometer NAM, is a little bit higher from across central and southern Mississippi, and you have a bit of a hole in the 0 to 1 kilometer shear. But in general, you're talking about 150 to 250 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, a little bit greater over southern Mississippi. So the super outbreak of April 27, 2011, you had 3 to 450 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. So in this case, you're talking about 200, 250, and this is at 22Z, 5 p.m. And it does ramp up after dark on Wednesday night. So it really starts to increase here across eastern Mississippi, western Alabama by 23Z. You really start to approach 300 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicities by 6 p.m. So the NAM is showing this outbreak beginning a little bit later. That's when the strong, violent tornado potential could begin here across eastern Mississippi into western Alabama by about 6 to 7 p.m. and then really ramping up after dark out here. You're going to have renegade storms throughout this environment, central southern Mississippi, western Alabama there. But definitely is arguing to play those renegades a little bit and just stay out ahead of this system because some of the greater wind shear is out near the western Alabama, Mississippi line out there, near the Columbus area, up toward Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. Those areas are really going to be under the gun. This is at 1Z. And big time, of course, you're going to have PDS tornado soundings all over the place out here with a 50 to 60 knot, 1 kilometer wind. Big sickle-shaped photographs here. Definitely a recipe for strong, violent tornadoes happening late night too. Let's zoom in just a little bit here. Yeah, look at that, jeez. And this is going to continue well into the overnight, Wednesday night. Definitely a dangerous environment here across Mississippi, central southern Mississippi into central Alabama, as well as up into Tennessee there. It basically looks like all the models are showing round after round of dangerous supercell storms producing the potential of strong, violent tornadoes. You can see that the mesoscale is going to be important, and the HRRR is trying to figure out how these different rounds of storms are going to evolve and if they'll turn into complexes of storms that will stabilize the atmosphere over certain areas. Will that act to block the low-level jet into western Tennessee or not? Or will this complex of storms not form and allow that wind shear and the warm front to surge all the way up into western Tennessee like the 3-kilometer NAM is showing? But it is definitely showing quite a complex evolution of the convection. The HRRR shows a little bit less of a robust boundary back closer to the surface low, and that front through central Arkansas shows a little bit of a messy storm mode out there. But it definitely shows all these renegade storms. Central Alabama back towards central Mississippi here shows kind of a congealing of these storms back behind it. But really what we need to see is more model runs. You need to wake up in the morning tomorrow, see how the mesoscale is being resolved a little bit more. This is a 3-kilometer NAM. The 3-kilometer NAM has a much more open, free warm sector here. This is at 22Z, so this is 5 p.m. You're probably going to have all these tornado-producing storms across eastern Arkansas down into northern Louisiana. Probably have some renegades up into central Alabama as well. Likely will be some renegades into Mississippi. But look at this line of supercells approaching the Mississippi River by 6 p.m. The 3-kilometer NAM is also showing these renegades across central Arkansas. Likely new renegades forming as well across central southern Mississippi. This is at 0Z, so you just basically have tornado-producing storms up and down the Mississippi River, Jackson area. The hint of some renegades out near Columbus into central Alabama as well. And the low-level jet really starts to ramp up near and just after sunset. You start to get those 50 to 60 knot south-southwesterly 1-kilometer winds. Look at this big slug of a low-level jet covering the whole entire state of Mississippi at 7 p.m. And you're going to have dangerous supercells embedded within this environment. You got 60 to 70 knot 1-kilometer winds here out of the south-southwest. My friend Tyler Constantini is sending me some updates, some model updates. Now the critical angle of 58 degrees. So around 20Z near Meridian, the RAP has some pretty crazy soundings out there. Kind of in east central, southeastern Mississippi by about 2 p.m. As I'm considering heading down into that location. Here the 3-kilometer NAM though has a nice pop of a low-level jet here around midday into central Arkansas. So there definitely is tornado potential late morning through midday across central and eastern Arkansas. That's where the strongest channel of that low-level jet's going to be, central and eastern Arkansas there. This is going to be late morning. So any storms that do develop and interact with that warm front are going to have a chance to be dangerous tornadic supercells even as early as late morning across central Arkansas. So my plan is to wake up at about 4 in the morning. I'm going to look at the data once again. And right now I'm targeting near the Columbus, Mississippi area, some renegades, but I am going to keep this target here in eastern Arkansas late morning into the middle portion, into the noon hour. open as well. Keep an eye on that when I wake up in the morning. Look at the meso analysis as well. And then I may head toward central Mississippi for the afternoon hours by peak heating for the formation of those renegade storms. It definitely is a scary sight to see that massive open warm sector like that. Surface winds are all out of the south-southeast direction there throughout the entire warm sector. And then you over top of that, you overspread a 50 to 60 knot 1 kilometer wind out of the south-southwest. You have directional shear, you have speed shear, you have a big time trough with positive vorticity advection over a massive warm sector. You're going to have bands of renegade supercells that form within the open warm sector, central southern Mississippi into central Alabama. And then this whole thing is going to spread to the east on Thursday. And it looks like there's a potential for more severe weather across the Carolinas, and there is an enhanced risk out there. And it includes my mom's house, so it looks like central South Carolina, southeastern Georgia. Before that, though, even upstate South Carolina, and then portions of eastern North Carolina. You've got some pretty crazy soundings out there as well on Thursday afternoon. It looks like a Carolina Piedmont event. Look at this elevated mix layer coming in at about 3 kilometers just above the ground. You can see that dry slot coming in, helping to steepen those lapse rates. And, of course, a textbook hodograph. There it is. A textbook hodograph there in eastern North Carolina on Thursday. So just like April 15, 2011, when you had that big outbreak that started in the late morning hours, southern Mississippi into Alabama. That was the Leakesville tornado as well that evening in southern Mississippi. Then that ejected, and on April 16, 2011, the Carolina Piedmont got very active, including the Raleigh area, down throughout eastern North Carolina, very active. One of the biggest outbreaks, I think, in North Carolina history out there, April 16, 2011. So it looks like a pretty active day thereafter on Thursday as well across the central and eastern Carolinas and eastern Georgia, and I'm going to be chasing that event as well. But first, we got to get through tomorrow. A dangerous day. Really, this massive blob here of surface-based instability and 0 to 3 kilometer shear tells the story. 3 kilometer NAM covers the whole state of Mississippi with favorable conditions for strong and violent tornadoes. So in the entire state of Mississippi, eastern Louisiana, central and eastern Arkansas, basically central and western Tennessee, and much of the state of Alabama, you need to keep a very close eye out on those NOAA weather radios. Stay tuned to watches and warnings because a very dangerous day is expected. Let's look at some of these forecast soundings. So this is at 0Z across east central Mississippi. Let me show you what this photograph looks like. Of course, it's a PDS tornado photograph, but look at this big, sharp, dry air layer 2 just above the ground. You can see these south-southeasterly winds at the surface, and then you got a 50-knot low-level jet. Pretty deep moisture, nice lapse rates at the low levels as well. And then you get the hodograph, and look at this hodograph. You've got a surface wind that's about 15 knots out of the south-southeast, and then a 1 kilometer wind of 50 knots, and that's going to accelerate to above 60 knots as you go through the evening and the overnight hours, so you're going to increase that even more. You've got a critical angle of about 60 degrees, but you're probably going to have a right mover even a little bit further right than this. Due northeast storm motions at about 40 knots, so these storms are going to be moving fast. This outbreak's going to evolve quickly. Multiple rounds of supercells, so not just one round of supercells and then you're done. It's going to be round after round. This warm sector is not going to be going anywhere during the Wednesday afternoon and the overnight. It's going to slowly push off to the east, but really multiple rounds of severe weather, and this is all that area within that hodograph curve and the storm motion vector is that strong storm relative helicity. And then you've got the strong mid and upper level winds out here, more than sufficient to evacuate the rain and the hail from the updraft. That photograph right there, big 50 knot 1 kilometer wind, close to a 10 knot surface wind. So definitely a dangerous setup, everybody. I can't stress enough just how bad this is probably going to be. But it's that time of year for Dixie Alley in the early spring. And look at this big blob that the HRRR, the 0Z HRRR, just really carves out a large portion of Mississippi. So there is a chance that there could just be a couple, that maybe there could be some early storms that kind of carve out a big section of the warm sector. But I tend to not buy this with these big anvil shadows and everything from morning convection just carving out a big area of the instability. I think that with these very dynamic systems in Dixie Alley, with such a strong low-level jet, you're almost instantly recovering the air mass once the storms happen. It's not very dry out there either, so. But this still would argue maybe going to central and southern Mississippi just a little bit earlier in the afternoon just to play more of those renegades across the open warm sector out here. It's like down near Jackson by about 0Z wouldn't be a bad play. Kind of a mesoscale warm front here, or differential heating boundary. But I think in the morning you're probably going to see a trend closer to the 3-kilometer NAM with just this massive untainted warm sector. That's kind of how the models have been for a long time, basically showing this clean warm sector here, strongly sheared warm sector. Run after run has shown this, and I think that this system, that's kind of a telltale characteristic of this outbreak, is that it's going to have a massive untainted warm sector with renegade supercells within it. You see these little holes that the 3-kilometer NAM is showing. Those are all renegade supercells in there. So my plan is to wake up here in about 6 hours, and I'm going to be heading down to my target area, central southern Mississippi. Stay safe, everybody, and I'm going to be going live during this entire storm chase, at least as much as I can. I've got some new equipment. Just went to Best Buy, so I've got a new camera, GoPro. But I definitely can't stress enough. Stay safe. Stay tuned to those watches and warnings. Information saves lives.